Welcome, everyone, to the post-Preakness edition of It's Official, presented by First Bet and Express Bet. I'm Jeremy Plonk, joined as always by Jeff Siegel. This is our weekly recap show where we look back at the weekend that was. And, Jeff, it was a bittersweet time at Pimlico. Some great racing on the track, some tragedy to go with it, some highs, some lows, a little bit of everything, the mixed emotions that go through it. We're going to speak specifically to the racing on the track here in this edition of It's Official, and it was quite a throwdown in the stretch of the Preakness. That'll be one of our certainly hot topics to talk about.
Yeah, it was a little unsatisfying. The race itself, the Preakness, was for me disappointing. Not from a gambling standpoint, but I would have loved to have seen Mage win. But there was caution. You expressed it for sure. And I didn't quite buy into it. But about the eighth pole, I realized, those guys who thought maybe the 2 weeks might do them in, did them in, for sure. Yeah. And then you had National Treasure, who I actually picked second in the race, won the race. But I think maybe he got some help from the lack of pace and the scratch that we had, the critical scratch that came up. So it wasn't a real satisfying weekend, but we'll build on it. Now, there was some other great racing on it, and we'll deal with that later on. And there's always next week, so we will cover what happened, what might happen later on, and there's lots to talk about because of that.
And we're back to having one of our topics this week, the stars of tomorrow, and that's always the eternal optimism that goes in racing. No matter how cloudy things look, a good horse and a forecast for the future is always a pick-me-up to people playing the game and those involved in the game. So let's go to our 5 topics this week, starting right off the bat. Pace makes the Preakness. It was slow as expected in the Preakness Stakes, but maybe not this slow, Jeff. Opening half mile in 48.92, 6 furlongs in 1:13.49. And that left really just 2 horses to duke it out in the stretch, and they did fight it out. We're talking about National Treasure and Blazing Sevens. Dave Rodman with the local call, and you get a special look at the head-on replay here, courtesy of the MJC.
With less than 3 furlongs left to go, 6 furlongs up at 13.49. National Treasure with a quarter to go at Pimlico has a neck in front from Blazing Sevens. Mage is called on to run, and Red Route 1 down to the inside. National Treasure, Blazing Sevens trying to get by their uneven terms, and head-to-head with a furlong left to go. Mage has to quicken up from third. Blazing Sevens, National Treasure fighting back on the inside. Blazing Sevens on the outside. Blazing Sevens, National Treasure. Oh, what a Preakness! It's National Treasure who gets the lead late. Fights Blazing Sevens all the way down the stretch. Mage was third, Red Route 1, and then it was Chase the Chaos. Perform and Coffee with Chris.
Proper word usually picked by Dave Rodman. Once again, he is right on the call with fight. That was a fight in the stretch. Irad Ortiz being aggressive to the outside. John Velasquez to the inside, came out to find him. They found each other. They rubbed rubber coming down the stretch a few times, to use a NASCAR term. But Jeff, the horse who got the early lead and was able to dictate the pace, was able to hold them all off in National Treasure. Your thoughts on the pace and the importance of it?
Well, first of all, I was looking forward to the horses coming by the stands for the first time, because you had warned me that what would happen happened, and that was that Johnny V on National Treasure from the rail was going to pack everybody out, which he went. Mm-hmm. I must have come out. I didn't see the head on to the first time by the stands, but must have been 5 or 6 lengths. Yeah. So, I mean, that's race riding, and that's just the way the New Yorkers seemed to ride. But he got away with a very soft pace, and I think, what was first of all was disappointing was that First Mission was scratched, because he would have been in the right spot. And based on his form, I think he could have run really well and probably would have won it if he had been able to run. But then the pace was slow, and National Treasure, who had the advantage of a slow fractions inside draw, so everything kind of came together for him. His Santa Anita Derby race wasn't bad, so I could envision him running well, which he did. Yeah. And then, of course, he's hooked by Blazing Saddles, and the two battle head to head, with Mage right behind him with dead aim, and in my mind, certain to go by at the quarter pole. And then all of a sudden, he was out of gas. Mm-hmm. No late speed materialized. The horse that you gave a chance to perform, I thought had a chance as well. He didn't raise a gallop. So the whole race kind of came up empty to me. And although it was a thrilling race, 98 Bayard number, so I don't know. I mean, it was an exciting race if you like National Treasure, as Some of my friends did, and I didn't listen to them. But I don't know whether or not this was a Preakness for the ages. That's the only thing that kind of was disappointing to me.
The thing that stood out was the final 3/16 of a mile. It was absolutely exceptional. 18:05 on the clock. I went back and looked at the Equibase charts. They go back to 1991 with the Equibase charts, where you can pull them up. This is the fastest come home time. The media guide for the Preakness Stakes shows that Summer Squall in 18 seconds flat in 1990 is the fastest final 3/16. We don't know about the Secretariat hand timing and all of that. Let's just took 1990 to the present at least. We know Summer Squall was 18 flat. That year they did not time the race in hundredths of a second. So this is either the fastest or co-fastest or second fastest come home time in a Preakness. Absolutely aided by the slow pace early. No question about that. They go faster than that, faster than this published time early. They do not come home in 18 seconds, these particular horses. But to their credit, they still were able to come home. We've seen slow paced races that still don't come home that fast. So they at least did quicken and pick up. And that would explain why none of the horses from the back did anything whatsoever. One, they didn't fire. Two, the horses in the front quickened. And then Mage just spun his wheels, as you said. He had dead aim. He only had to make up 3 lengths over the whole back half of the race and wasn't able to do it. You know, I mean, he didn't make up anything. I think he got beat 2 1/4 in the end. So, he got beat. He made up 3/4 of a length on the front runners over the last half mile of the race. That wasn't the same performance that we saw in Churchill, regardless of how the pace went. Mage did not fire as well as he did in Kentucky, but that's also not to be unexpected, right? A lot of Kentucky Derby winners come to Pimlico and don't fire as strong as they did at Churchill Downs. But sometimes that's still good enough to win because they're great, and a little bit less than great for them, still good enough to win the Preakness. Some good Derby winners come here and kind of hit the board like this after a good effort. And then some bad Derby winners come here and they regress and they're nowhere to be found, and they don't go on to do anything. Think, some horses over the years that failed here and didn't get back on the beam, the Always Dreaming, Super Saver, horses like that. This makes me think that Mage fits somewhere in that middle category. He's not a great Derby winner because a great Derby winner, even running a little bit regressed, wins this race. I think he's a good Derby winner who this race was quality for him and running third, beaten 2 1/4, 2 1/2. But it's not anything to write home about as a great horse would have beaten this cast, this particular cast too, because between Blazing Sevens and National Treasure, neither had won a race this year, if I'm not mistaken, right? They're both 0 for the campaign this year. They run 1, 2. Those are the ones you got to run down. If you're a great horse, you got to beat those two in this particular situation. Pace or not pace, I think.
I got the impression that if he had been in the race and National Treasure was not, Arabian Lion would have won this race based on what he did in the Surbar.
Same style, right. Two fills. I mean, we'll talk about him in a bit, but any horse who would have run that same style may have run it even better. And National Treasure was good enough to win this thing by a photo after getting away with historically weak track.
And as far as Mage is concerned, not only did he regress because he certainly, I mean, his numbers wise he regressed, but this, as you pointed out, this wasn't the Derby field that he had to beat. This was a far lesser group, and he still couldn't do it. He could have won this race and regressed. I mean, even Justify, when he came back and won the Preakness, I mean, he was life and death to do it. He regressed. He just was good enough to win. But
he barely beat Bravazzo in the fog, right? And who was Bravazzo?
Right. So the bottom line is that's one of the reasons why I was kind of looking forward. I mean, we're spoiled. We want to see Easy Goer and Sunday Silence every year. Right? We're not going to get that. Right. But now National Treasure has a chance and likely will go on to the Belmont. And if he can win that, and all of a sudden he's leader in the division, and I never considered him to be of that level. Maybe I'm underestimating him, and time will tell. But I was hoping that Mage would go out and justify his Derby win and didn't. So now we're back almost to square one. And because of that, now we almost start starting over. Don't you think, Jeremy, in a sense, in terms of the division?
Well, same as last year, right? Because Epicenter kind of was the leader going into the Derby, beaten favorite there, beaten favorite in the Preakness. We had different winners in the Derby and the Preakness, and we're all like, okay, where do we go from here, right? Yeah. Well, Donegal won the Belmont. We never saw him again. And then that division just kind of came back to Epicenter. So I don't know who this comes back to, does it come back to Forte by the time it's all said and done?
Maybe.
Maybe it will. Maybe it will. But yeah, National Treasure, I mean, they expect to move on to the Belmont Stakes with him as announced. And, there's no reason not to, offer
Right.
this effort here. But is he good enough to beat these horses in the Belmont Stakes?
I don't think Graham thinks.
And Graham, the dog, who's
No,
listening
he's
in here
he's
today,
adamant.
he's avid that National Treasure could not win the Belmont Gold a mile and a half. I agree with you, Graham.
No, I agree. I'm. By the way, I like when he chips in because he's pretty smart. He's a lot smarter than people think that dog is. I listen to him anyway.
He's ready for a vacation, and we're going to get to that here in a couple of days. So have a seat, young man. We've got more show to go on with here. Let's move to topic 2 here this week on It's Official as we stay in this theme of the 3-year-olds and the Triple Crown talk. Let's move to the Belmont, where we exit Mage. He's not moving on to the Belmont Stakes, but Forte will be back in the Belmont so long as he gets the veterinary thumbs up on the workout. He's already breezed, and he's going to work again and get the thumbs up, hopefully, from the veterinary scene. Your thoughts on Forte now as we look ahead to the Belmont? We'll look at the probables, the possibles, as we should say, 2 weeks out now, plus from the Belmont Stakes. What about Forte getting back into this mix?
Well, it was good to see him breeze on what was it, Sunday? I think it was on the training track, just a half mile and 50 and a fifth. But I mean, he's back training, so hopefully his foot problems are a thing of the past. And I think if he were to run as well as I'm sure Todd Pletcher is hoping that he will run, he may very well be the horse to beat in the Belmont. I mean, he's got proven form there. I mean, he really strikes me as a horse that would love a mile and a half, Jeremy. I mean, he doesn't have an incredible burst, but he looks like he can carry it for a long time. I mean, he makes extended runs. He's got enough tactical speed to lay close up. I'm very interested to watch him breeze again and maybe 2 more times before the Belmont, but I could see him win that race.
Yeah, and this is him collaring Mage in the Florida Derby, and that, like you said, not a brilliant turn of foot, but he grinds and he gets to you. And at Belmont, that can be a good style. Of course, the stretch run at Belmont is short. It's the shortest of the 3 Triple Crown races. Everybody will talk about, the big Sandy Oval. It's all turns. When they turn for home, they don't have as long a stretch as they do at Churchill or at Pimlico, but it's a short stretch at Gulfstream, and that's kind of what he's going to be looking at in terms of length from top of the stretch to the finish line. It's going to be very similar to Gulfstream at Belmont, and so if he can grind and run down a good horse like Mage in the Florida Derby, he could certainly do it in the Belmont. Of course, a lot of Belmont stakes are won with that move on the turn, and when they come off the turn, everybody's kind of gassed at the end of the mile and a half. So if you can get to the front at the top of the lane, it's a good spot to do it. Who might Mage be a part of the field when we look at the Belmont Stakes? Here are the probables, possibles, however you want to say it, at this point in time. All the horses on the left side of the page are horses out of the Kentucky Derby. Angel of Empire and Hit Show for Brad Cox. Tap It Trice and King's Barnes for Todd Pletcher. The Troubled Trip horse Raise Cane for Ben Colebrook out of the Derby. Sun Thunder for Kenny McPeak. Of course, he won this race with 70-1 Sarava, so never say never. And then Reincarnate was an interesting name that Bob Baffert threw out there. He's got 3 that he's still considering as possible for the Belmont. Reincarnate wouldn't be a horse that jumps to mind, Jeff, to go a mile and a half, but Baffert listed him.
Well, I think that might be an owner's call more than anything else. But I'm talking with Bob a few days ago. I think that he originally thought Arabian Lion would probably one of the Woody Stevens. I guess maybe will reconsider that. He might think that if for whatever reason National Treasure doesn't make the race, although that's the plan, why couldn't Arabian Lion do what National Treasure
right?
Right. What we saw the other day was really impressive, I thought, in the Sir Barton. And so if you look at this group, Forte will be tough. I'm also intrigued by Arcangelo. I really liked his Peter Pan win. I thought that's a colt. I don't know about the mile and a half, Jeremy, but that's a comer. He is a good colt, I think.
Yeah, like you want to look at the Peter Pan and say, these are the fresh horses. These are the horses that didn't go through some of the grind of the Derby and a lot of the preps to get to the Derby. So Arcangelo comes in really kind of fresh and peaking towards the Belmont Stakes. We don't see a lot of success out of that race historically, but hey, everything's changing. There's a shifting landscape in the 3-year-old scene of the way these horses are campaigned now. There'd be no surprise that in the future, if they do start to see some more success from the Peter Pan to the Belmont, Sir Winston was able to make that move a couple years ago. The horses on the right side there, National Treasure, Red Route 1 coming out of the Preakness, then the 5 at the bottom, where horses have not been in the Triple Crown Series to this point. Forte, Archangelo, Prove Worthy, Henry Q potentially, and the Arabian Lion could be a third possible there up in the Baffert barn. Those are 14 horses. We've had 8 in the Belmont each of the past 2 years. 10 probably is a realistic expectation for a good sized field, I would think. This year, I think somewhere in that 10 ballpark. So we're not going to see all 14 of these come back. Many of those from multiple trainers, so the odds of Pletcher, Cox, Baffert all wanting to run 3 horses, that kind of thing like that. We'll probably see some attrition off of that list, Jeff. But I would say a good field of 10, maybe something like that. Shouldn't be a short field for the Belmont because there's nobody to be afraid of, right? You're not running from anybody in this particular race. But again, we had 8 the past 2 years. Last year, Modonegal was favored coming out of the Derby, got the 5-2 victory off the 6th place finish, I believe it was, in the Derby. Yeah. So we've got a couple horses in that 5th, 6th area, the Tappet Trice, the Angel of Empire. There's kind of horses that ran okay, hit show. Yeah. They ran okay in the Derby. Now they got the time off. They should be pretty effective, you would think, come Belmont time in a couple weeks. Let's move on to the fillies now and talk about the BlackEyed Susan. That was where Taxed was victorious on Saturday at Old Hilltop. Taxed, she collected on the field here at a nice price for trainer Randy Morse. Let's take a look with Dave Rodman's call of the Friday BlackEyed Susan.
With a quarter to go at Pimlico, Who's Your Filly turns for home. Who's Your Filly? Faisa's working hard. Inside there, dropping back is Merlaza. On the outside is Taxed with a furlong left to go. Who's Your Filly's in front, trying to stay on. On the outside, Taxed. The 2 grays are slugging out of the final furlong. Taxed has grabbed Who's Your Filly. Taxed in front with a 16th left to go. It's going to be Taxed pulling the upset in the BlackEyed Susan Stakes. Taxed and Rafael Bejarano from Who's Your Filly second.
So, Jeff, it was Pretty Mischievous who won the Kentucky Oaks through the Fairgrounds route. Mm-hmm. We saw Who's Your Filly second here in the BlackEyed Susan, also from that Fairgrounds route. But Wet Paint, you and I thought going into the Kentucky Oaks, was the filly in the 3-year-old crop, and she was the favorite in the Kentucky Oaks via Oaklawn. Tax chased her a couple times down at Oaklawn and wasn't able to get it done. Now seeing Tax come back and win the BlackEyed Susan, I'm beginning to wonder if the Kentucky Oaks just wasn't an off performance for Wet Paint, or was it simply that she's not as good as we thought? This cloudy 3-year-old filly division, I think it's a little cloudier even after this BlackEyed Susan.
I mean, this is a filly who was claimed for maiden 50,000 in November, even though she had brought 105,000 at auction, and the connection's willing to give up on her already after 2 starts. Ran her for 50. She won that race. They lost the filly, and now all of a sudden she's the winner of a BlackEyed Susan, and doing it, beating obviously fillies that we thought were good. I mean, it's good to see Who's Your Filly bounce back and run well, although she got, again, when you see lone F controlling speed type of trips, that'll almost always bring out the very best in a horse. It's kind of like what I call a pristine trip. It doesn't always get duplicated, and they don't always run well when they don't get that kind of trip.
Yeah, right.
So when Who's Your Filly was handed the early lead, I'm thinking, okay, she thinks this is just a workout. We know she works well, so she was able to continue on. And then when finally put the pressure in the final furlong, she gave it up as she'd been doing.
Yeah,
that's understandable. But what I cannot understand is how badly, and even though she hit the board, that Faiza was way below what I thought she was capable of doing. I'd watched her run; her numbers were rising. She trained well. She was in a great spot in the clear, and she ran. You know what she did? She pulled a maid. She just the same thing right there.
Yeah,
and all of a sudden, nothing. That was surprising to me.
Yeah, it was surprising. And, the fillies she'd been beating in the West Coast, we didn't know how good they were. But like you said, if you follow the numbers and things like that, she was rising. She was getting better. She was untouched in 5 starts. You expected more than this. Even if she gets beat, if she runs like Blazing Sevens did in the Preakness and gets beat, then you say, okay, she brought her game. Somebody outfought her. Maybe we exposed her a little bit, but this was kind of like major exposure in that she really didn't fire with much at all. And what we had seen out of Who's Your Filly in a couple starts this year, it was like you're not beating her. You didn't even get by her. So even if the winner runs a big race, Feza was definitely flat in that. It was a tale of many tales for Baffert over the weekend. Feza didn't run at all. You had the tragedy with having a meltdown, breaking down, and having to be euthanized. And then you had, great performance like Arabian Lion and a winning strong performance by National Treasure. So it was all over the map for the barn. A lot of times a barn will ship in and have multiple horses and they all kind of run subpar and you go, oh, okay, boy, they were all off for whatever reason. A lot of times they come in and they're all hot and everything's scoring. This was all over the board for Baffert this past weekend, and Fezes was definitely the most befuddling of the performances of the horses that he had sent to Pimlico. Let's get back on the Breeders' Cup tracker, shall we, Jeff? This is something that we had the Triple Crown tracker all spring. Now we're heading towards the second half of the season, and we're going to get geeked up for Breeders' Cup various divisions. Breeders' Cup mile winner Modern Games was in fine form back in the Lock-In Stakes. Let's go to England and check that one out.
Jacket towards the left, being asked to pick up the Wizard of Iron Light Infantry behind those. They can see the 2 furlong marker. Muda Sabek still has the advantage. Laura's in second position. Chindit is still there. Lucille running a bid race. Then My Prospero and Modern Games in the blue nearest to us delivering his challenge. Berkshire Shadow behind that, but it's Chindit at the furlong pole. Chindit has the advantage. Here comes Modern Games in the blue. Muda Sabek behind those, and then Lucille as they race towards the line. William Buick and Modern Games come through to win the Ulster Cab Lockage. Chindit is next to Berkshire Shadow, My Prospect, Muda Sabek, Light Infantry, and Lucille.
Jeff, a lot of times with these Europeans, we have to figure out who they are before they come over. Modern Games as well. He feels like family, right? I mean, we've had him for the holidays a couple times now, and we're used to his success. This looked good. This looked like the good version of Modern Games.
Right. Of course, he was second in his seasonal debut at Keeneland. Ran maybe below expectations that day, but he was back in winning form and winning this straightaway mile at Newbury Group 1 race. After the race, his trainer, obviously Charles Appleby, giving up an update as to what the plans are. And one thing about these Euro guys, these Euro trainers, they know exactly what's going on. And the American trainers, I don't know. We haven't thought that far. This guy's got a plan. He's going to stick with it. Royal Ascot next, probably the Sussex Stakes at Goodwood after that, maybe a fall prep, and then, of course, back here for the Breeders' Cup Mile. So that's the plan, and it's good to see that Modern Games is back in winning form. And there was some disappointment, really, I guess, when he was beaten in his seasonal debut. He was 2-5 in the race at the Maker's Mark. But if you go back and look at that race in retrospect, that might in itself be the toughest mile turf race for older horses all year long. You had Shea Pierre, and what would an It's Official broadcast be without a mention of Shea Pierre? So he won it, won by 3.5 lengths. Just an update, he breezed a half mile in 49. He's at Fair Hill now. I did that over the weekend. So I'm not sure where he's going to run next, but if you have a good turf colt horse, find out where he's going to run and go somewhere else. Then you got Modern Games, who was second in the race. He franks the form by coming back and winning at Newbury. Up to the mark. Could you have been more impressive than he was at Churchill? He was third in that race we talked about. And then, not to forget about him, but Emmanuel, who I actually like to win the stake at Pimlico, got beat, a nose and a head or something.
Yeah.
He was in that same race, was 7th beat in 11 lengths. Comes out of that race and runs so well at Pimlico. A monster race, the Maker's Mark. That should carry Maker's Mark grade 1 for the next 10 years. You can always point back to that race, the one that we had back in April. So hopefully all these horses continue to be in form. We could have a Breeders' Cup Mile for the ages, but good to see Modern Games, back in form, and good. Hopefully he will get back here and be in form, and let's just keep our eyes on Shea Pierre, because he might be the monster that you and I have predicted that he would be, even dating back to last year.
Yeah, I can't wait to see his reappearance for sure. Let's stay on this Breeders' Cup tracker, if you will, and Modern Games was the old hat, right? Something old. We know about him. Something new to the Breeders' Cup scene, though, could be Straight No Chaser. What a fantastic performance in the Maryland Sprint on the Breeders' Cup undercard. This one headed towards the Breeders' Cup Sprint division in fast style.
With a quarter to go at Pimlico, Straight No Chaser pouring on at speed. 44.66 is a half mile, and Straight No Chaser has another gear. Straight No Chaser and John Velasquez with a furlong left to go. They've got a 5-length lead. What a sprinter. It's Straight No Chaser. Straight No Chaser. Look at this. We'll win by 6. Prevalence was second. Nakatomi was third. And then Full Authority in 1 minute 8, smoking .27.
Just a little bit off the track record there, about 2 ticks or so off the track record of Kofefi. They do not run 108 flat, 108 and 1, 108 and 2 at Laura or Pimlico very often. This is one of the better local sprint efforts in some time, Jeff, and razor sharp for Dan Blacker.
Out of the mare Margarita Friday, hence the name, and Straight No Chaser, who had won his previous race by 7 at Oaklawn, and earned a triple-digit buyer number there. It comes right back, earns a 107 here. That's Breeders' Cup Sprint quality speed figure. He's only had now 7 starts, 4 wins. He's also won on grass, so he can do that. And he's getting better by the race. I mean, he absolutely demolished this field. And now Dan's got to figure out, okay, what do I want to do to get to the Breeders' Cup in California? What do I want to do? Right. What kind of plan do I want to make? How much, usually sprinters, you don't have to run a lot. You just kind of get them cranked up. They run and they back off. You crank them up again. So it'll be interesting to see what they try to do. It's a My Racehorse colt, so he's got a lot of owners and a lot of followers there. And the way he ran in this race, he's a very, very important member of the sprint division and maybe the leader or maybe he will be the leader by the time the fall rolls around.
Yeah, he's just absolutely spectacular here. Also want to add here in our Breeders' Cup tracker, Rattle and Roll, winner of the Pimlico Special. He got a distance win, mile and 3/16 for the Pimlico Special. Makes you wonder, last year they cut back. I think they went marathon with him. I wanted to see him cut back and run in the dirt mile. Maybe in the Breeders' Cup Classic is a long shot in this division now. He got to the mile and 3/16. Kenny's convinced he's a longer distance horse. He got his good win here. I mean, the Pimlico Special is not what it used to be. I mean, it's not the cigar skip away days of the Pimlico Special, Ruhlman and Criminal Type and those sorts. But for distance, are we thinking more of maybe a classic horse here now?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think there's a question about that. I mean, that division usually gets pretty thin towards the end of the year, and the 3-year-olds take over. But I'm not looking at any superstar 3-year-olds quite yet, Jeremy. And this colt who went through that Triple Crown thing or the pre-Triple Crown thing and kind of got off track, But I think now they know what they have, and if they're going to allow him to be what he can be, which is a middle distance to classic distance dirt horse, and that's it. And they can say, okay, let's backtrack. We've got the Breeders' Cup Classic. What do we want to do before then? How many races? Where should we go? Let's try to keep protecting him in these lesser races for older horses, and eventually we'll take on the big boys. But no, I don't think a mile and a quarter should be perfect for him. And I mean, absolutely. If you were my horse, that's the goal that I would have. So go on with it.
And Rattle and Roll has a stablemate named Smile Happy, who won the Ali Sheba at a mile and 16th on the undercard on Derby Day. Yeah. He could be a dirt mile type horse. So, where you put your horses a lot of times depends on who else you have in your stable. So if you got Smile Happy for the dirt mile, then Rattle and Roll for the classic, you keep the two separated and you got a shot to run down 2 different divisions. That's a good problem for Kenny McPeak to have. And McPeak's got another problem on his hands. Maybe not his problem, but everybody else's problem. In our Stars of Tomorrow segment, as we return looking at impressive maiden and horses early in their career, we've got a 2-year-old named Vivis Dream, trained by none other than the aforementioned Kenny McPeak. Take a look at Vivis Dream in the debut.
Progress angling outside, racing for the mid-stretch marker. Cheetah Miss, tenuous lead. Vivis Dream bearing down quickly. Vivis Dream to the front. Vivis Dream to the front, and now opening up to the wire. Vivis Dream, sharp effort to win it by 4.
So Jeff Siegel, tell us about Vivis Dream.
Well, she was originally bought for, let me get my notes out here, $130,000 as a weanling by Arundel, who races horses. And then they pin her. I guess they tried to pin her back, and they made a little money, not as much as I think they were hoping to get when they resold her at Keeneland last September for $190,000. So a little bit of profit, but I think they'd rather have the filly at this stage. Yeah. Kenny McPeak signed the ticket and has this filly from the first crop of Matoli, a win at first asking. And the way she did it was impressive. She wasn't like out there opening up 5 early and then dominating. She came from off the pace, won without really being knocked about, did it in style, ran 52 flat or whatever it was. It was a 57-4. Last 8th and 12-1 under wraps. As from the first crop of the top sprinter Matoli, you have to wonder how far does she really want to run, and we'll find that out eventually. But she's not going to have to run very far until the fall, and there are a lot of good stakes races for her late at Belmont in the Saratoga where she could run. So, but the way she won, that bodes well for those who have invested in Matoli as a stallion, those who have shares, those who have bred up, those who are selling Matoli 2-year-olds and yearlings this year. They're all thrilled. And the way she won, she absolutely looks like a star of the future, if not the present, based on that very impressive maiden win at Churchill.
For Matoli, his first winner at stud, I believe it was the 6th or 7th different starter, and 8 previous starts, maybe 7 previous starts for Offspring and Matoli going into that race. So he gets his first winner early in the going, and that's a good sign for a first crop for that stallion. So that's going to wrap up our topics this week. Give you a quick review of what we had on It's Official this week. Pace made the Preakness, and National Treasure and John Velasquez were the benefactories, and the one delivering that out at Pimlico. Our Belmont talk, Mage will exit the stage after running in 2/3 of the Triple Crown. No horse will run in all 3 legs this year. Forte back in the Triple Crown mix, though, in the Belmont Stakes. Taxed collected in the BlackEyed Susan Stakes. Feza finished off the board in a disappointing effort on her end. We got to the Breeders' Cup tracker for the first time in 2023, and Breeders' Cup Mile hopeful. Modern Games, a past winner of that race, very impressive in winning the Lock-Inch. The Breeders' Cup Sprint has maybe a new favorite in Straight No Chaser, highly impressive winner of the Maryland Sprint. And our Stars of Tomorrow recapped with Vivis Dream, maiden winner at Churchill in her first career start by the sire Matoli. Big week for trainer Kenny McPeak, and a big week for all of those who enjoyed the Preakness Stakes, its highs, its lows. We certainly don't want to diminish any of the incidents and things that we've had in the last couple of weeks. I will say on a final note, too, I want to get this in that, the transparency still isn't where it needs to be in horse racing. The first mission scratch that the vets had been treating the horse for a couple of days while we were being told everything was going great. And then all of a sudden the plug was pulled, kind of reminiscent of what was going on with Forte before the Derby, where we were kind of in the dark about it. You got national media everywhere. I can't believe nobody picked up on the fact that the Kentucky Derby winner had stitches above his eyes for a couple of days before anybody noticed it. Like, what are people doing there that are walking around and covering the race in the media? I mean, so we need to know these things as players and as fans of the game, and the transparency is so important. It's not about getting outed on Twitter and then having to come out and make a statement about it because now everybody knows about it. Get ahead of the story. That's the old word, right? I mean, the best PR is to get ahead of the story. Be honest, be forthright with things. And there's nothing nefarious going on. The vets checked it out first mission. They scratched him. They did the right thing. Everything was cleared and fine to run. It didn't affect Mage, in his preparation and such. Everything was fine with that. There's no reason to hide and sweep things under the rugs. Let's be more transparent about it in the racing game, and let the vets do their work. Let the trainers do their work. Let the fans and the punters play with confidence. There was already, I believe, by the time we heard about the Mage eye thing, there's already $500,000 in the win pool for the Preakness Stakes at that point before it became public. Things like that. Whether you think stitches above the eye is a reason not to play a horse or whatever, that's neither here nor there. It's the fact that you should know about it.
That's why the NFL has their injury reports on a daily basis, the week of a game. They want transparency. They know how many millions upon millions of dollars are bet on football, and especially now that it's legal in a lot of places. So every day I check the injury report for my teams, Not that I'm gambling on them. I just want to know who's going to play,
Right.
And I don't know if racing will ever go that far. I'm pretty sure they won't, but it would be nice to know what's going on and not find out.
Yep.
In this day and age of advanced betting and everything else like that, it wouldn't hurt to let people know what's going on. But horse racing's rooted in secrecy. It's been that way for 100 years or 200 years, whatever it is. It's hard to break out of it. Maybe, and if we had some kind of commissioner or something, then maybe they would. But we don't. Never going to have that happen. So just going to have to live with it. That's just my opinion. It's disappointing, but that's the way it is.
We are 24 hours into the HISA era. The Horse Race Interstate Safety Act, it began yesterday. Of course, we record It's Official on Tuesday. So, maybe disinfectant is, sunlight is the best disinfectant for a lot of things. No pun intended here in the medical area. But, maybe just the talk about this, the regulations, the rules, the connectivity from state to state to state now under some of these different and now, similar parameters, maybe just all of that and the attention to it makes things a bit more transparent. It may not solve everything at all, but we can incrementally move forward, at least with some transparency. Because I got to tell you, as a bettor, I was frustrated last week, really frustrated with what was going on, from back to the Forte, through the two things there with, we're not talking about like minor horses, right? The Derby favorite, the Derby winner, the horse who ended up would have been second choice in the Preakness Stakes, first mission. So that, there's a lot of interest on these horses, and there's a lot of interest in doing the right thing by the horse. So if you are doing the right thing by the horse, which they were in these cases, then tell about it. Don't try to hide anything. That's my final thought as we close out this week's show. We remind you that we'll be back on Friday, Jeff and I, to handicap the weekend stakes races, a big Memorial Day weekend at Santa Anita this weekend. So our Friday podcast is back on its normal time slot this Friday, first call. Jeff and I will handicap the weekend stakes races. Let you know at Santa Anita this weekend, they're going to have a mandatory payout on Monday, Memorial Day, of the Rainbow Six. And there's also going to be a single ticket provision, I believe, on Friday and Saturday that guarantees if there's a single ticket winner in the Rainbow Six, they'll be guaranteed to get $1 million. So a couple of huge Rainbow Six promotions coming up this weekend at Santa Anita. So be sure to stay on board for that. As mentioned loosely earlier, I'm going to be on vacation next week, so we're going to take a break on It's Official next week and come back Belmont week. So we'll have our It's Official Belmont edition coming up in 2 weeks' time on Tuesday. We'll also have first call on Belmont Stakes Week moved up a little bit to Thursday to help you with your handicapping when we get to that one. But that's still a couple weeks away. Jeff, we've got a big Memorial Day weekend to come.
Yeah, we do. We have lots of good racing out here at Santa Anita for sure. I'm very happy that you are taking a vacation next week because that means I can take one too.
Yes.
So take as many as you want, by the way. I mean, it's fine with me. We'll be off next week. Next week, we will not have It's Official, and we will not have the first call on Friday. But I'll still be gambling, and I'll still be handicapping on the website at ExpressBet. Yep. So we'll have the usual amount of information there. So I'm not going anywhere, and even if I did, I'd probably bring my computer, But you don't do that now.
This is my first non-computer vacation.
I'm pretty sure your wife will hide your computer. She won't let you bring that along.
Last year we messed up and scheduled it during Belmont week, so that didn't work out really well. So I said,
"No, I guess not.
We got to check the calendar a little closer this year. So we got a week ahead of Belmont this time, so we don't have to work during vacation." So on behalf of everybody with First Technologies, my partner Jeff Siegel, you all have a great week, and we'll talk to you on Friday.